thing I would say to everybody here is, he touches on a particular phone call that he had from someone who was very negative. If you notice the individuals that are putting out this information, they're not asking questions. They're angry and they're negative. But if you look at their persona and the way that they act, they're looking at the glass half full instead of half empty all the time. There is no way to make those people happy, because the root of their unhappiness has nothing to do with the color of the sign out front, or the day that the construction starts, or even now that they can come back to the pool. It's like, well, how come I can't come from 2 hours instead of 1? You follow what I'm saying? So we need to all keep that in mind and try not to internalize it. The board, Charlie vented a little bit here. Everyone is obviously offended because they really take pride in this place. They put themselves out here to do community service, to make it the best place ever to live, and now they're getting assaulted on a personal level. Anybody's going to have a little bit of anxiety, but we do talk as a group, and we are not going to get down in the dirt and arm wrestle people that cannot ever be happy. It is not a condition that really warrants a reaction. And unfortunately, it is being spun like the board is reacting to everything that's going on rather than running the place. So what we're trying to do now is get out all the pertinent information that may not have gotten out in the past, because honestly, the board is busy making decisions and getting things done because they want it done more than anybody else. To Maddie's point, she feels it's important that we do a recap and reset to say, listen, we decided we're doing the project, here's what it was going to cost, we paid the money, what the hell's going on? I do want to clarify, the money that everybody is saying that was spent, the $3,250 assessment, that was to pay off a loan for the existing thing you were already using that's getting ready to be thrown in the garbage. You can't use that and tie that to this new project, because you didn't pay $3,250 for the project. You paid $3,250 to pay off basically the encumbrance on the building so we could move forward. That's all it was. It makes me crazy when people say, I paid the money. They didn't pay the money.
2 years ago,
Yes.
they
You know what,
forget
I've
why
been
they
trying to
did it.
speak for the last 10
Yes.
minutes.
Okay, so Mo's next on the list. So go ahead.
First of all, I'm a little disturbed.
Take your mask
Take
off.
your
so we
mask
can
off.
hear
I'm
you.
a little disturbed that we spent a half hour complaining about a few people. What I really would like to have done, and I think we should do, is get out the information for the 99% of the people to be very happy once they know what was going on. And starting with this,
Yes.
and I didn't read this carefully, but I glanced through it. Why isn't this out in an email? Why isn't this out in the Venetian Times or some written stuff that people can look at? That's what we should be
It
doing.
will be.
Let me just- having a couple of us come back and talk to a couple of people that we know, that's not gonna do it. You need something that goes out to everybody, and if somebody complains, you say, did you read that? And you get them back, and we'll get all the facts. There's some more questions I have to ask, but basically, this covers a lot of the things that I was concerned about. And I think these should be coming out, even if they have to come out weekly, even if they have to come out with slight updates. Get the information out to everybody that way. You have what, 95% of people's emails?
Yes. So not to cut you off, but that's the purpose of this meeting, is we've come up with what we've heard as the questions. Before we send this out to the community, we want the input from all the presidents and some of the board members of each community, because you have your pulse on what your community is asking you. We want to make sure we didn't forget anything. Are there other topics that we need to discuss? And once you see these answers, we're going to say to ourselves, okay, do they clearly understand what we said, or do we need to re-clarify? Because remember, if there's only the master board, which is 6 people, and myself and a handful of others, reviewing this stuff, we have a lot more knowledge of the everyday ongoings than everybody else, and sometimes we'll say something, and we don't realize that everybody else doesn't have the knowledge base to understand what we're talking about. So by giving it to you first, you can vet it with us, and then we will have a document that will not be misconstrued in public. That's the
Two
goal.
questions I don't see on here, maybe I didn't read it carefully enough. Are there any changes in the scope of the project? That's what most people want to know. Are we backing off from the balcony? Are we doing something else with the?
No, the only reason why, let me just jump in on that. If you remember my email, okay, when I sent with the board, I sent it out as, with the signing, it was from the board, one of the first things I said in that email was, the scope of the project hasn't
Okay,
changed.
that's what has to be put in the
Okay,
first.
all I'm saying is, but it's not even that, but you're right, and we need to do more. The bottom line is, how much do we give them? And this is what drives, okay, this is a little more expensive in terms of explanation. I'm not saying we shouldn't send this out.
What do you
The
lose?
problem is, when you give an answer that the scope of the project hasn't changed, and at this time, we are still doing all of the new capital projects. There was just one sentence or two sentences.
That
If
should
you
be
make that question a paragraph, okay, don't they understand about, so the frustration is, how much do you give them? But you also wanna make sure they have a full idea of what's going
Well, the
on.
point is, that should be the very first thing that people, the second thing is, has the time frame changed, or what is the time frame now? That's the second question that everybody asks.
Okay,
Those
so-
are the two most important things, the others, the details, I think giving them more is not gonna hurt. What's wrong with this? It's just an email.
People won't take the time.
So,
to
the
read
only
it.
thing, the only thing you have to keep in mind, the only thing you have to keep in mind with giving them so much information, this document is already how many pages? The response I get from a lot of people is they won't read it if it's that long. They
So you
want
do a
bullet
summary
points,
and
they
then
want
you go on
something.
to detail.
What?
They can look at the summary first, and then if they wanna go further, they can look at the detail.
Yeah,
But
and,
the
and
two-
again, you're not wrong. All I'm pointing out is it goes through the board's mind that we do get a lot of feedback, that if it's a lengthy email, they don't even wanna read it. And our goal is really to get the information
But
to
then you
them.
go back to them and say, don't ask me this question, go back and look at the email.
I know, it sounds kinda nasty.
After they got the email.
Can we just
yes,
ask Mike Noy one
They don't
question over
understand
here,
what
because he
the
hasn't had a
file.
chance to say anything yet?
I think that this type of meeting is very valuable. I sent an email to Herb and to Charlie suggesting that we do this because, you do this maybe once a month, but at least once a day, we're getting questions that we don't know the answer on. And even my master board representative, even my master board representative, the things that she is being told, that's a moving thing, and that changes. So I get information from my master board representative, I pass it on, and then it changes, and then even this meeting, little thing like that, it changed 4 times from the time we started it, and it creates a lot of communication, and I'm sure what I'm experiencing, all the other communities are experiencing the same thing. So something like this should be on a regular basis, just to not make us look foolish, because when we have a question, that you gotta say, I don't know. And to add to Mo's question, one of the things that I'm being asked is how, and you hinted at it a couple of times, is what's going to be, as a result of the X months of delay, what's going to be the new estimate for how much this project is going to cost? And I can tell you, in Palermo, people are scared. People are scared that no matter what you write, it's going to cost them more money. Okay. And I am not saying to them, you're absolutely right, because I just don't know. All the people started and they looked at the front gate and what happened out there, and we're not going to go into the history of that. Okay. And then after that, now we're going into this major project of redoing this building. And I read, after Ginny told me what was going on next door, I read all the comments to prepare myself for this meeting. And so I get a feel, and I don't know the people that you're talking about, but I get a feel for what the community is worried about. And my question personally that I have is, I know the members of the master board, and I know you, Paul. Okay. Have you gone to Castle and their specialists and their expertise for help on a project that is at least a year late and it's gonna go over budget? Have you gone and asked for help?
Yes.
And that's my question.
So the question, there's a couple of things in there. You started with the change in price. There's a change in the timing of the project, but part of the delays are due to the fact that the board has committed that this thing won't go over budget. So when the new prices come in and it's over budget, they've gone back to find ways to get it so it stays under budget. So the answer to that is, put the people's mind at ease. We are not going over budget on this project at this point. It is fully funded, it's fully able to be completed with all the bells and whistles that we showed everybody at this point in time. That's not to say that if they're using a crane outside and they come across an ancient Indian burial ground, the things aren't gonna stall. But barring anything latent like that, this project is going off as planned and will come in under budget. That issue is put to bed, and that's part of why it's taken so long to do a contract, because the board and management are all anxious to get started. We could have signed a contract to get the ball rolling that was millions of dollars out of budget and just thrown our hands up in the air and said, you know what, it's 2 years later, of course it's over budget, just send out a special assessment or we'll figure out how to pay for it later, and loads of boards will do that. We didn't do that because that is not what we promised the community. We promised them it would come in a certain way. And if you read through the answers to the questions, which I'm sure you haven't had a chance to see yet, you will see the process that was gone through. And the process is not the board of directors. It's the board of directors giving the architect, the structural engineer, the civil engineers, the designers, the acoustic people, the sound and lighting people, the access control people, the landscape architects. I mean, there are myriad professionals that are working on this project, because it would be insane to think that 6 volunteers that were either school teachers or business people would have the ability to even come up with what the possible things are. From my perspective, I have a little more background because I've done projects before. I have worked on building entire condominium complexes. I have renovated inside and out skyscrapers down here in Miami and all over New York. So I do know more, which is why I wound up becoming the mouthpiece, because I at least understand what the people are talking about and then can in turn explain it to other people. But even that, I'm not the project manager. There is a project manager who is working for Venetian Isles as our representative, not for the construction company. The construction company has a construction manager that works on their behalf. On top of that, we have civil engineers. We have, like I said, you can see in this document, there are tons and tons of people. So what happens is, this is not happening in a vacuum. Every Tuesday, we have a call. Every Thursday, there's a call. And there are millions of things that go on in between to check the status of how things are progressing, and if they're off the rails, who's the responsible person to answer this question from the zoning department. So there's a system to all of this. We have not shared all that with the community at this point, because honestly, for me to put something up that says, there's a comment from the zoning department that says you have to deal with the groundwater runoff while you're doing construction so that the lake is not contaminated. You know what? The average person that lives here does not want to know about that. What they want to know about is, what day is the fence going up and when are you knocking down the building? Because that's what they can see. That doesn't mean we don't have to deal with all of those things. We're dealing with all of those things. That being said, what's going to happen is the minute the construction starts, there is a Gantt chart. It exists now, except what happens is, until we start the date of the actual construction, the start date and all the other dates change. But it says, okay, you're going to start site work this day, then this has got to happen, this has got to happen, this has got to happen, and it gives you an end date for the completion of the project. The time to do the building has not changed. They have told us that it is less than 1 year to build. We all know, though, that things will happen between now and then, so it's probably gonna be more like 18 months or so in a good day. If you look at Valencia Isles, that took 2 years,
Yeah.
okay? It's not unusual for these things. Addressing your question about have I reached out to Castle Management, of course we reach out to Castle, because Castle is involved in building these things all over the place, so why wouldn't we talk to Valencia Isles? Why wouldn't we talk to all the other places? We do that on a regular and systematic basis,
Yeah.
and
Good.
factually,
Let me
Castle
just-
has a whole internal system of vendor referrals, so that if we need something, or we need to find out a question, we type it in the computer and it comes up with everybody that's ever worked on a Castle project in the entire state as a resource for finding an acoustic person. How the hell would any of us know where to find a guy to figure out what the sound and lighting needs for a ballroom would be? We don't, but you know what? Castle does, and Castle
Okay.
does it. So
Let me
I,
just-
so let's
throw
go back
one
to her
thing.
for a second.
So
Just based on
the
one of
fact
the
that
things-
we answered my question proves that a meeting like this is important, because now I can pass that on to the 100 houses that are in Palermo, when they call.
And we apologize for that. The reality is COVID has thrown a wrench into this, because you all know, when we used to have our monthly meetings and I would stand up on the stage and take all the random questions, by the time the 300 people that were here left, they left with a sense that, okay, well, they do know what's going on, this other stuff is nonsense. We've gone 5 months without the ability to talk to anybody. So that's why we're like, we have to do something, and we thought this is the best vehicle to do it. Lindsay,
I
you wanna
just
go back to
wanted to
her
throw
for a
in-
second, then we'll go back to
Only
her.
because you had brought it up before, Spark, when we talked about costs.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, because, that's strange, people can't hear me, wow. No, I'm just, anyway, the bottom line was, if you talk to some of the people that you do talk to, whatever, a lot of times they keep throwing out, like the link one, I'm not picking on that now, I'd like to, talks about 7 million, or whatever the number was, 7.25 million, we put it in the brochure, or whatever. Most reasonable people know that 2 years after that number went out,